Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Chasing Dreams podcast with Charlie and Justin. We're on episode 122, and we are coming at you from Studio B, and we have the windows down, and it's a beautiful morning.
Yes.
A little bit rainy, but that's okay.
We can deal with it.
We've had a string of several warm days, and I don't want to say that because now I'm going to jinx it, and we're going to have
some
snow because we live in northeastern Ohio. So it's actually funny. I was talking to people at the gym the other day, and they said that something along the lines of, this was probably about 2 weeks ago, and they said something along the lines of, oh, well, I'm just so thankful that we're done with snow for the year. And this was, of course, right before we had about 3 inches worth of snow. It was our most recent snow.
Right.
And I tell them, you can't say that because you're never done with snow.
Yeah.
Like, you can think that you're done, but you typically there's always one more left in the holster that Mother Nature's going to throw at us at times. Yeah. But it's a really good sign when everything starts warming up.
Anybody that says that in like March or even April is very bold.
Yeah. Yeah. I try not to jinx it and just take it day by day. But it is nice that the weather's kind of starting to take a turn for the better.
Yeah, I got out of work a little early yesterday and did some spring cleaning. I shouldn't say early. Actually, I started extraordinarily early, but it was so nice out. We had the baby out in the yard, let her play in the grass, and just did some spring cleaning around the house. So
yeah, it's also very nice because we're now have an extra hour of daylight because we spring ahead with the clocks last week.
Yep.
So because of that, you got more daylight. It's warmer out. It's just a very, very uplifting feeling. And there's a lot to be said about the biology of that.
Yeah.
Being out in the sun and exposing yourself to sunlight. I was actually listening to a podcast earlier, I think it was yesterday, and one of the things they briefly touched on was the importance of sunlight and the negative effects of wearing sunglasses.
Really?
And how that eyesight can actually improve when exposed to longer periods of sunlight versus wearing sunglasses. And then I know firsthand that there's a lot of I don't want to say negatives, but I'll actually take it the opposite way. There's a lot of positives to not wearing sunglasses in terms of like cortisol release and stuff like that kind of regulate or auto-regulate your circadian rhythm. So I've been trying to get out into the sun at every opportunity possible now that we have more of it and it's warmer. The unfortunate reality is that I don't have a lot of time just because of all of my jobs are indoors.
Right.
So, but even with like some trainings this week, since it's been nice out, we've done some things outside, which is always a positive. And I feel like every nice day we have, that's something we talk about on the podcast, is just having the opportunity to get outside and get in the sun and try to expose ourselves a little bit and get natural vitamin D, just because everything is so much better when you're out in the sun.
I think it's really beneficial from like a psychological standpoint too.
Mm-hmm.
Like you feel better.
Yeah.
And I'm not even going to like science. You just physically feel better when it's nice out and you're not cooped up inside with the heat on.
Well, I think that I used this quote the other day with someone. I forget who I was talking to, but I said, nature knows.
Yes.
Like, nature knows best. So when you talk about like an anatomical perspective or a physiological perspective, there's just a little bit of an intuition that people like you and I have. Once you get in tune with your body and you kind of start to not understand how your body works, but you understand how to try to figure out how your body works.
Right.
Kind of like speaking the language of your body, you realize that there's a lot of things that we as just innate, inward-seeking and outward-seeking humans can figure out and problem solve on our own. Like, this feels good, I'm going to continue to do this. Not necessarily feels good in terms of feels comforting, but feels like it would be beneficial to me.
Right.
Like, one of the things that I always harp on is nutrition. And I say that people understand what good nutrition is. They just say that they don't understand, almost as a subconscious cop-out to not have to do the right thing.
Right.
But if you eat good foods long enough, you're going to feel better. And that's just something that's innate. You know that this food is good for you, so you're going to eat more of it, and in turn, you feel better. So I think that going back to that premise of nature knows that being outside and all those things feel better or make you feel better, and you're going to be more inclined to do them.
Right.
Like, you just know that being outside it feels fresher, it feels rejuvenating, all those things. So I try to that's kind of like how I've lived my life lately. Is I don't want to say doing less. It's going to come across as not the thing I'm trying to say, but like having less, using less, just being as biologically simple as possible. Like the shoe thing,
Yeah.
like the barefoot thing. Like, I try not to wear shoes ever, if at all possible. Now, I mean, for school, I have Vivo barefoot shoes, which are minimalist shoes, wide-toed, flat-soled, very, very lightweight shoes. But even like people were making fun of me the other day where I had a client who was done training and I went out to the car to talk to her mom for a little bit. And I went out in bare feet. Now, it was relatively cold and rainy, but I'm out in the parking lot in bare feet. And people thought that was funny because they're used to seeing me in the gym in bare feet, but they're not used to seeing me outside in bare feet. And I told them, I said, listen, in the summer when it's not super freezing, I won't wear shoes literally all day. From sunrise to sunset, I won't wear shoes. Like, I'll get in the car in the morning, go to the gym, and I'll be driving barefoot.
Yep.
I'll typically have a pair of flip-flops or something in the car with me just in case, like, I have to go into a store or something
Right.
where I can't go barefoot, but I try to do that all the time. So that's just kind of like an example of little things that I do when I'm trying to simplify my life and go back to things that my body was intended to do.
Right.
Like, even little things. So, for example, I wear underwear,
Yeah.
but I know that there's a growing contingency of people in like the homeopathic world that don't wear underwear because it's constricting to certain areas, and they talk about lowering testosterone production due to like the constriction of the undergarments and all this stuff. I think that it's really, really fascinating to think about that.
Yeah.
And then one of the things that, just another random thought off the top of my head along these lines, is reading about skin to skin contact with a baby and how there's like huge psychological benefits and spiritual and emotional benefits of having a baby that's skin to skin. So like holding your child, because humans, with the exception of those in colder parts of the world, and it was a seasonal thing, weren't intended to really wear clothes.
Right.
So, not that you walk around naked, but there are instances of going back to biology as being the most important. We talked about that a lot over the past 2 years, several episodes from an exercise perspective or a functional perspective.
Right.
Like, I saw this post on Instagram the other day talking about how exercises, meaning lifts, like certain lifts, are man-made exercises.
Right.
Like in a singular plane. Most of the lifts, like I talk about that with my athletes, most of the lifts we do are in one plane of motion. Whereas,
push or a pull.
Yeah. And then when you talk about like anatomical planes, like the lateral plane, the sagittal plane, like very rarely do we incorporate multiple planes of motion into movements.
Right.
So like rotation and lateral plane or whatever. And I think that that's kind of important for athletes to develop, because on a playing field or on a court, you're not in one plane of motion. You're in multiple planes at the same time. And when you look at exercise, like, okay, what were humans designed to do? Like, we were designed to crawl, to run, to roll, to jump, to fall.
Yeah.
Like all those things. So I have always thought about, what it would be like to try to undergo a training program per se for an extended period of time without doing, I don't want to say man-made exercises, but exercises that are
specifically man-made.
Yeah, like stationary and isolating and those sorts of things. I think that would be pretty cool. Now, the only problem would be you would almost have to use man-made apparatuses, just because of the fact that with our goal of hypertrophy, meaning muscle gain, that you're kind of relegated to load being a necessity.
Right.
Like, I don't think that, at least in my experience and what the research shows, and then me specifically with my genetics, I don't think I could add a lot of muscle tissue just doing body weight stuff.
Right.
But it would be cool to see like a sample size of time where you implement those things. And like, I know like you and I, we go through phases of those sorts of things where we try to implement more, and I think we're doing a good job with some of the throws and things that we do.
Yeah, and that was one thing I was getting ready to mention was, we've kind of implemented some of that just, in our end of our workout routine, where we use that heavy rogue ball and throw it, carry it, or, do the walking lunges and stuff like that. So,
yeah, I don't know if we mentioned that at the end of the workout. Yeah. I don't know how we came about it.
8 weeks or so.
Yeah, I think it was me that came up with the idea. I
Yeah,
can't really remember
yeah, it was.
where we were talking about functionality, and I think it was Chad, one of our training partners, could be wrong, but one of them was mentioned wanting to do more core work as well.
Yeah,
And so I figured we could kill two birds with one stone in terms of functional movement and core
hmm
improvement. We could do loaded carries and throws at the end of every workout, regardless of what we train. So carrying something that's very heavy and throwing something that's usually really
yeah,
heavy would be implemented into our workout because like I talked about before, like with the throwing, you can get rotational things out of that,
yep.
rotational benefits. So the variations that we do vary
We
week to
try to,
week.
yeah, we try to make it different.
And I know that in the past, what we've done, or at least tried to do, is let that align with what we did for the day. For example, if we did a push day, a lot of our throwing, like we will take a very heavy, it's like an Atlas stone / medicine ball,
Yeah,
where it's like made of polyurethane and filled with sand. So it's very heavy, like an Atlas stone, but we'll throw that. And what we'll do is we'll load it kind of on the chest from a standing position and throw it upward. So
right.
that way you're engaging shoulders and triceps when we throw it. And we throw it back and forth to each other over a bar that's set pretty high, probably about, what, 6,
7 feet.
7 feet?
Yeah,
Yeah. And we're throwing over that. And then on our pull day, we'll, instead of pushing the ball, we'll throw it backwards, like overhead. So then it still kind of mimics a pull in terms of off the floor and engaging a little bit of the back when you throw and the biceps when you throw. So we try to make it kind of align with what we do, but realistically, it's a little bit primitive in nature where we're just grabbing heavy things and throwing heavy things.
yeah, and people don't realize how hard that is, like to throw something heavy, and it's not even that heavy per se, but it's something way heavier than anything that a normal person would throw.
Yeah.
It was incredibly difficult when we first started doing it, and then we started doing that one earlier this week where we did with a 10-pound medicine ball, and we were like throwing it like a shot put, basically, but seated.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was a lot tougher than I thought it would be.
Where it was a single arm. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly it. It was a single arm shot put with a 10-pound medicine ball.
Yeah,
And then I think that you always talk about two types of people. People who have functional strength, which would be people that are strong outside the gym. Specifically people who don't strength train. So your guy that works construction his whole life has never been in a gym his whole life,
Right.
but he's super, super strong from a functional perspective because he's used to carrying heavy things and
swinging heavy
sandbags. And
hammers.
I saw that on the oil rig where I had people that were half my size just manhandle like different tubs of things and bags of things that I could barely pick up.
Right.
And I look at it and I would think to myself, like, gosh, I'm so much bigger, so much stronger. This guy's double my age, half my size, and he's just throwing this stuff around.
Yep.
But there's something to be said about functional strength. Then you have the opposite, where you can bring those people into a gym and they don't have like the neuromuscular patterning or conditioning to
Right.
be able to perform these movements. It's like a skill, like we
Yeah.
talk about. Like you don't have that skill of being able to do a bench press. And the functional strength will have a difficult time immediately translating into the weight room. So one of the things I notice about myself is a lack of functional strength, relatively speaking. So it's not like I'm super weak outside of the gym, but I have a difficult time like moving furniture or something that doesn't require me because I'm so tuned into like my technique
Right.
on different lifts and isolating. And so that's the other thing is isolation. When you're lifting in a gym, you're trying to isolate and squeeze certain body parts to get them to grow. When you're moving furniture, it's the opposite. You want to do it efficiently. You don't
Right.
want to do it inefficiently and isolate certain body parts because they'll tire out and they won't be very strong. I want
Right.
to use everything I have to move this couch up the stairs
Right.
or whatever. So I think that if you can blend a lifestyle that does the functional training, then in turn when you blend that with the true strength training in a gym setting, in turn you should have a pretty strong individual.
Yeah, like a well-rounded.
Yeah.
It's strong and athletic.
Yes.
Basically.
With the athleticism thing, I was listening to a podcast and Gosh, I wish I had my phone on me because I want to mention the guy's name. I believe his last name was Tuttle. He was on Mark Bell's Power podcast, and he's a barefoot sprinter, and he was
Okay.
on just recently. And I haven't listened to the full episode, but it's awesome because they talk about all the things that I like: barefoot training, eating organ meat,
Yep.
like all kinds of cool stuff. And he was talking about, uh, gosh, a multitude of different topics, but a lot of it was like, again, all going back to biologically simplistic items.
Right.
Not wearing shoes, again, eating organ meats, all those cool things. And it was really a great listen. So for those of you that have any interest in the things we're talking about, make sure you go check that out. One of the things that he mentioned that I thought was really, really interesting was how we as humans, and I've been on this train for a while, but that's more so because of the fact that I'm in a kind of like a paradigm where sprinting is important because I work with athletes literally every day of my life. So he talks about sprinting and how it's so odd that it is completely phased out of our training as human beings. Because for us, like us being humans, sprinting is an innate, necessary survival mechanism. Like you need to sprint away from things
Right.
if something's trying to catch you and eat you, or like like take it back to primitive days. You're going to die if you can't sprint because either something's going to catch you to eat you or you're not going to catch something to eat it.
Right.
So sprinting is very important. And the times when you need sprinting the most, in terms of like a day-to-day activity for people that are aging, is when you're aging.
Right.
Because the older you get, you start to lose those fast twitch muscle fibers. Your body needs to build up a tolerance to exercise and resiliency to injury prevention. So as you get older, you should be sprinting more and more. And we don't do that. We completely phase it out. And he said, once we're done with sports, for those of us that play sports, we never sprint
again.
ever.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to think about like how beneficial sprinting is. And he was talking about in terms of like movement, like jogging is not his thing. Because he said, I either walk or I sprint. He said, really, in life, there's very, very few reasons why you should jog.
Right.
When you talk about, like, again, a biological perspective. And I thought that his insights in that were really, really cool. And I've never heard somebody talk about it. It's something that I've pondered before, but never really voiced about how we don't ever sprint.
Yeah, I don't
And
think
we're designed to.
like our bodies are physically built to do it.
Yeah.
That's something I haven't ever thought about unless you play sports after high school. You turn 18 and become an adult and stop running.
Well, even when you do run, people, and this is something he spoke about too, was he said he originally started off as like a cross country runner, and that's not what running is in his estimation now. He said running is sprinting.
Right.
It said when people say, "Oh, I'm going to go for a run," they think like I'm going to go for a jog at a slow pace. When do we ever say I'm going to go for a run, do a couple sprints, and then come back? Where there's how many benefits to that?
Right.
Metabolically, functionality wise, even tissue building, like nervous system benefits. Like sprinting is something that should happen. And then I firsthand know what it's like when you go a prolonged period of time without sprinting and then try to sprint. I told this story before on the podcast where I actually had a minor tear in my hamstring, which is long since remedied. I mean, this was, I can't even remember how long ago this was, maybe during the summer, where we were doing, somebody wanted to do some sprints with me. And I said something along the lines of, well, I'm going to have to take it easy because I'll probably tear something because it's been so long. So coincidentally enough, we started kind of up-regulating our percentage of output. So we did a couple sprints, like, and I'm talking 40, 50 yards, couple sprints at like, I don't know, probably 25%. And then we did a couple at what we would perceive as 50% of our output, then 75%. Well, then we did a few short bursts at like 5-10 yards of full power. And this individual wanted to do like a 100-yard sprint. And I said, you know what? I don't know if that's safe for me, because there's some research that talks about like overspeed and different lengths, and how I want to say that a guy that I work with, Adam Blumen, who mentored me in some of my athletic training endeavors when I worked with him, talked about a lot of injuries occurring over a certain threshold. Like it was 22 yards. I think he
22
said,
yards.
where there's something specific where most athletic injuries in terms of sprinting breakdown, so like hip flexor injuries, predominantly hamstring injuries, happen after like a 22-yard threshold. And I was kind of dismissive of wanting to sprint for that reason. But then when I was told, well, it's a race, then I said, okay, well, I got to do it now. And right when I got just over 20 yards, right in between that like 25, 30-yard threshold, I felt it pop. And that kind of was a very eye-opening experience for me because, you know, am in my early 30s. Last year, I think I was 30, 31, whenever it was. And I kind of like paused and thought to myself, like, holy crap, I'm only 30 and I can't even sprint without getting hurt right now.
Right.
So that means
fix that.
Like something, yeah, exactly. Something along the lines of my training, not even training, but lifestyle needs to change. Like I need to be able to sprint more.
And that's so that the irony that you brought sprinting up organically, because we haven't talked, I mean, at all about sprinting in months.
Yeah. Years maybe.
Yeah. I've been thinking about with our end of the workout routine, instead of carrying sometimes, why don't we do short sprints?
Yeah, especially with the weather being conducive to that and getting outside. And I actually like to do it with my athletes. I was talking to someone about this just last night. One of the things I like to do with my athletes is pre-workout sprints. So nervous system upregulation type stuff. So we'll do all of our mobility work and our traditional, what you would picture a warm-up to be. And then right before we actually start our explosive movement stuff, we start with sprints.
Yeah.
When the weather's nice, just to upregulate the nervous system. And then after that, then we go into our generalized movement, whether it's jumping or shuffling or even more sprinting or whatever. Yeah. But starting with sprints is largely beneficial.
Oh, sounds like that's a plan.
Yep. So let's go to a quick commercial break and we'll talk training updates when we come back.
As listeners of the Chasing Dreams podcast, we know that you demand the highest quality at all times. If you're interested in quality, look no further than Beast Mode Baking. Beast Mode Baking aims to bring the highest quality, creative, and of course delicious baked goods to your home with nationwide shipping. All orders need to be pre-ordered to ensure they're packed fresh and shipped out to you as soon as possible. Beast Mode Baking offers a flat rate of $15 for shipping due to the size and weight of the cookies and doughs. So if you're interested in Beast Mode Baking, please contact CEO Shannon Knorr. That's at SKNORR13 on Instagram and order your delicious baked goods today because every time you support them, you're supporting the podcast as well.
And we are back from our commercial break. Okay, prior to the break, we were talking about sprinting and primitive living and all these things that the sprinting we haven't, but we talk about on these primitive living aspects pretty frequently.
Yes.
Predominantly in terms of training. I mentioned, like I try to transcend this into multiple avenues of my lifestyle.
Right.
So nutrition, been eating a lot of organ meats lately, all those sorts of things. What I've been doing too is and this is kind of a training update in and of itself, I've actually been rotating my organ meats. Now, I was eating a half pound of raw liver every day. Now, there are some people that will argue vitamin A buildup, but there's some studies that kind of dispel that in terms of liver consumption being super, super high and your body being able to auto-regulate like fat-soluble vitamin intake, or at least toxic buildup of it. But regardless, I've been rotating organ meats lately because of availability. So the one thing with all food, but specifically with organ meats, is sourcing. You have to have it from a good source. Like getting liver from Walmart is not going to be the same as getting liver from a free-range, all-organic farm, which is where I get mine from. I have like pure grass-fed, organic raised cows, and I have that for all of my organs. I get them from a particular farm that's local, and sometimes they don't always have beef liver, so cow liver. Sometimes they have chicken liver, sometimes they have chicken hearts, sometimes they have sheep heart, which is my favorite.
Yeah.
But they have a whole bunch of different things. So what I do is I usually have about a half pound of whatever they have at the time.
And it's always raw.
Always.
You don't ever cook it.
I don't. Now,
is there a specific benefit to raw versus cooked, even if you don't over season and stuff? Just
there are. There are first and foremost biological or physiological benefits.
Okay.
So you can look at like digestibility, bioavailability. So bioavailability is how well your body uses things. Some foods are actually more bioavailable if you do cook them. For example, eggs. Your body uses more protein from an egg if it's cooked versus if it's eaten raw. So that's why the Rocky drinking the eggs is a little bit less efficient because he's going to get more of the protein and reuse the protein better if it's cooked. I'll be completely honest. I cannot get into the exact specifics of percentages of bioavailability of certain organ meats, cooked versus uncooked, because I don't know the numbers. But there are some benefits there. And then in terms of digestion, seems to be a little bit better in my experience, cooked versus or uncooked versus having it prepared. The one thing that I will say too, which is non-scientific but definitely worth mentioning for me specifically, is not digestibility in terms of like GI concerns, but digestibility in terms of volume and hunger. So for me, one of the things that I need to do is be able to eat more food to grow more.
Right.
So when I eat them raw, I can put them down a lot more efficiently. So if I have liver, for example, what I do is I cut my liver into chunks, and I know that one of the big things is that in the scientific approach to nutrition is that digestion starts in the mouth.
Yeah.
So enzyme production is going to break down the food while it's in your mouth. Also, digestion is significantly improved with more chewing, and that's one of like the recommendations that you'll get from people who are well versed on the topic is chewing a ton. So don't just chew your food a couple times and swallow like we do when we're really hungry.
Right.
Like chew it 25, 30, 40 times so it's completely decimated by the time you swallow it. So there are digestion benefits there. However, for me, the more time I spend chewing and stuff, generally the fuller I get.
Yeah.
So what I do is I cut up my liver, and then instead of chewing it a lot, I'll even swallow chunks of it whole. Well, when I do that, I'm able to eat so much more.
Right, and that's something that I have a hard time relating to, because for me personally, if I'm able to eat more, I lose less weight. So being able to eat less makes more sense to me.
Yeah.
But so I get it though. I understand, like you're for your goals and your mindset, you have to eat more.
Yeah. So when I eat them raw, I feel like I can fit more food
Right.
in, because I can there's times where I have like a chicken heart. I'll take a couple chews out of it. It's still relatively intact, and then I'll swallow the whole thing whole.
Yeah.
So again, that's just for me. So I think that it's important to quantify. And this is kind of like all informational stuff, is there's science behind it, of course, but then we need to find out what works for me or for this person. It's like doing a diet for someone or training for someone, where when I do people's nutrition, I don't look for the optimal plan. I look for the functional plan.
Right.
So this may not be perfect on paper, but it's the only thing or the closest we can get to perfect while still adhering to your lifestyle.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, I rarely, right now I'm never cooking my organ meats.
Right.
So
I guess for here's a question then. For somebody who wants to try to start getting into consistently eating organ meat. Like I've always ate organ meat. I've always ate deer hearts. I've always ate, beef livers, and that's about it. But for somebody who wants to start to consistently eat like a regimented amount of organ meat, would it be beneficial to do it cooked? Because I don't know that some people, myself included, I don't know that I could consistently do raw every day. Like if you handed me a piece of raw liver and say, hey, try this, I'd eat it. Even if it wasn't bad, I don't know that I could do it every day.
Well, let me first start with the science, not scientific, but the biology behind it. Is you would think that introducing a food, especially a raw food, in pretty high volume, pretty high frequency, would result in the body kind of kicking back.
Right.
or fighting back and saying, oh, no, you're not going to be able to digest this, buddy. Yeah. Like it's something you have to kind of build up a tolerance for. In my experience, I would say no. That was not the case with me. The first time I had raw liver, I had about a half pound of it. Never tried it before in my life, and I just crushed it. And I had zero issues whatsoever. Likewise, with the first time that I ever tried like chicken hearts. Like I had a lot of cow hearts in the past that were raw, but never chicken hearts. Had no problem downing a ton of them and never had any GI distress. I think the one part that would be difficult for people, and this is potentially what you're talking about, would be the psychological.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Behind, knowing that it's a raw food. I'm weird in the sense that I can kind of dissociate things just because, or I look at it from a different perspective, because people can say, oh, that's disgusting, but, fast food that we eat is a lot more disgusting in terms of what it's supposed to be made for and for your body.
What they claim it is and what it really is.
Yeah, like when you look at like a cow liver or something, we were designed as humans to eat organ meats.
Yeah.
Like for survival mechanisms. So that's what we're supposed to do. So I can kind of dissociate from what we do in Western civilization here in 2022, and I can actually kind of put myself in the mind frame of what the human organism was supposed to do, quote unquote. So psychologically, I never had a problem. I think that for most people, they're going to have to cook it first. Like I know, like one of my clients does a lot of organ meats. Like he does like cow tongue and a lot of stuff as well. Well, he cooks all of his, and there's nothing wrong with that. I just like mine raw for some benefit, some scientific benefit, and then some personal benefit as well. But I think that starting to cook it, if that's, as long as you're able to get it in, cooking it would definitely be the best first step.
Okay, so from nutritional standpoint, you're gonna gain the same nutrients as long as obviously you're not breading it and frying it. Salt and pepper and some olive oil and cook whatever.
Yeah. Yes.
You're gonna get the nutritional benefits from eating organ meat.
Sure.
If you cook it, then versus if you don't eat it at all because you can't eat it raw.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
The other thing, let me throw this out there too, that I didn't mention, but is super important for me as well in terms of the eating raw versus eating cooked, is I also don't have to spend time cooking.
Right.
Like I go to the farmer, they take it straight out of the animal, seal it in a bag. I open the bag and I eat it.
Yeah, because you have them cut it the way you want it too, right? Like
you can. Yeah, you can. They come the ones I buy are prepackaged.
Okay.
They're sliced pretty small because a cow liver's huge.
Yeah. Huge.
So the cow livers are sliced, and they're probably about like, I don't know, it depends, probably like 9 to 10 inches long, somewhat thinly sliced. So they're very, very convenient. But I'll cut open the bag, cut open the chunks, measure out what I need. And actually what I want to do is I want to start to do like a meal prep day for my organ meats where I weigh them all out and then freeze them versus unfreezing them or thawing them out and then weighing them, because it would be so much more convenient just to know that every single container of organ meat or every bag of organ meat I have stored in the freezer in the basement is measured exactly what I want it to be, so I can just grab and go, because it's even more convenient to do it that way. Absolutely. But convenience is huge for that as well. So maybe if you're someone who's strapped for time and you want an extremely healthy option that is also quick to prepare, it doesn't get any better than that, honestly.
Yeah, I guess so. Last question, and I'll leave you alone. Obviously, we both follow the Liver King.
Yeah,
and he's onto something, obviously, because you've done the research and you recognize that liver's king.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that was like a pun, but have you ever done, like, I see whenever he eats liver, a lot of times he'll put maple syrup on it.
Yeah.
Is that for him to palate it, or is that because he needs the extra carbohydrates? Or
I would say probably the former of that, because I know that he will go through bouts throughout the week where he's no carbs.
Right.
So I think that's probably for palatability. I know that a lot of people that do that use, I don't want to say condiments. Would syrup be considered a condiment?
As long as it's real maple syrup, no, it's not.
I
would have to say no.
He does that with like salt and stuff. I do not. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't know. I just haven't had the need for it. And for me, to be honest, I don't like liver that much. I don't think liver tastes good. The hearts I actually kind of enjoy.
I enjoy the heart.
I do not enjoy the liver uncooked. So what I do is my goal is to just get it down.
Get it in.
Now I don't hate it.
Yeah, it's just a benefit.
I look at it as what am I getting nutritionally speaking from this liver. So I don't try to make it's like trying to polish a turd.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm not going to try to make this, or like if you don't shower, just spraying yourself with like body spray.
Yeah.
And now you
just
smell like body spray. Turd. Yeah. Now you smell like body spray and you still smell like body odor. So I generally don't prepare it ever. I just eat it as is. But I think he probably does it for palatability, maybe. Okay. I'm not sure. But the other thing, too, worth mentioning is you can also supplement this stuff.
Yeah, you can get liver supplements.
Like Liver King, for example, if you guys, again, we've mentioned him on multiple episodes. It's at Liver King on Instagram. He actually owns a supplement company where ancestral supplements or I believe it's ancestral supplements, where they sell all these organ meats.
Yeah.
But in pill form. So it's like a desiccated liver pill. So you just take the pill and it's liver. He's always very adamant about these supplements being a far distant second to actually consuming the real meat.
Yeah.
But he said that it's the best option if you
it's
absolutely
a good place to start.
Yeah. If you're just starting off, or if you can't get quality organ meats in your area, or if physically or mentally you can't bring yourself to eat raw organs, because there's some people like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be a good place to start as well, is supplements or even cooking them if you feel the need to do that. But
fair enough.
Not for me. So other than trying to eat a lot more organ meats, what is new on the docket for us or coming up for us in terms of training?
Got to get stronger.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
No, I new on the docket for me is listening to everything we've ever said and actually applying it, all of it. Because I have realized that lately I've been doing a lot of every workout trying to take it to the max. Get as heavy as you possibly can. And not listening to my body. And then I'm, so don't listen to my body. Do a whole workout and then try to not listen to your brain whenever you're psychologically you're not as strong as you were yesterday.
Yes.
So I'm going to start doing some 80% work. Get to an 80% max and get working movements done. And then, after a period of time, 3 days or 3 weeks of that, and then we'll go for a max again and see how that works. See if we can get over this hump, because, we alluded to a few weeks ago that I had a hump that I'm trying to get over, and it's slowly moving, but it hasn't moved again in a few weeks. So I think it's a time to adjust, adapt, to overcome.
Well, think about this too. We always go through kind of phases of different training styles. Yeah. And you and I always talk to everybody about how it's important to incorporate variety into your training.
Absolutely.
So if you we say this all the time, what you should be doing is probably what you're not doing.
Right.
So if you're training super, super heavy, you need to go probably through some prolonged periods where you're going to receive a lot of benefits of not doing heavy training.
Right.
The reality is all of us are always going to gravitate towards the things that we like. Mm-hmm. So if I'm a distance runner and I want to incorporate some strength training to build some resiliency, strengthen my lower body to help prevent injuries when I'm doing my distance running, I can do that 2-3 days a week.
Right.
Well, then what I notice is a growing trend of people, even though they know it's going to benefit them for their distance running, which they like, they slowly start to phase that strength training out and go back to strictly long distance running. So I think it's important for us to have these frequent reminders of, okay, I have to do the things that I know are beneficial, even if they're not as enjoyable as the other things.
Right.
That are also beneficial.
And
but
it was, it was ironic. It was not ironic, but it was, luckily this time around, this phase around, I didn't result in injury. Because typically that's what happens with me. Is not a major. I've never tore anything, but typically I have a back injury or, something hurt. My shoulder starts to hurt and I have to cut it back because I'm forced to.
Yeah, you're forced to change training
Right.
styles. You don't decide, oh, I should change training
Right.
styles.
So, and I feel like that's like, to me, that's huge. That's growth.
yes.
You know, that's growing and, you know, maturing into this world
Yep.
better. So I'm excited to see how it goes, and hopefully my training partners all keep me accountable, because we all know that I will probably try to stray from the plan and go heavier than I should. So we'll see how it goes, though.
Yeah,
Really.
absolutely. And I think that in terms of even in the strength progression itself, that one of the most important parts, and we talked about this before, one of the most important parts of strength is actually adding muscle. So I know that that sounds obvious, but some people neglect, especially when they're training to get stronger, they neglect those like hypertrophic rep ranges.
Yeah.
So doing sets of 8 to 12, doing sets of 15 that is going to add on muscle tissue. Most people, when they're training for strength, train, you know, to max out, or 2 rep sets or 3 rep sets or 5 rep sets or whatever, which those are important because there's going to be like tissue integrity that's going to build up, like structural integrity is going to improve, nervous system improvements there, and then obviously adding muscle and strength.
Yeah.
But if you are more muscular, you're going to have the capabilities of more output and you're going to be stronger. So even like, especially really, really good powerlifters go through phases of times where they do hypertrophy work. They do higher rep sets and higher rep training splits in order to gain more muscle and therefore be stronger.
Yeah.
So strength isn't just applicable to like the 1 rep max.
I agree.
There's
I
more
agree.
types of training that will benefit that.
And it's fun to, as you know, I grow into this you know, fitness world, I start to see more of the ways you can look at progress.
Yeah.
You know, on the scale, on the track,
Yep.
on the weight bench. So it's fun to learn all those too. So and I think we're moving in the right direction, especially now.
Well, in terms of progress, what think about your New Year's goal?
Yeah.
Was
just to make progress,
measurable or visual measurable, and have it verified by
multiple people.
Yeah, 2 other people at least. So 2 other people say, "Hey, Justin, look, this has improved about you," and in terms of fitness.
Yeah.
So either your body weight going down, or your strength going up, or seeing visual changes that get verified through pictures, or being able to run faster.
Which I feel like we'll probably do a check-in here around my birthday for another, you know, just ask a couple people.
Yeah.
See what we think. I think that gives it a good sample time. That's like basically the end of the quarter.
Yep. It's always tough to blend doing things frequently enough to make sure you're not on the wrong path for too long. But you also don't want to do things, in my opinion, too frequently, because that can lead in disappointment.
Yeah, and it can cloud your judgment to the overall progress.
I think that's all dependent on the person.
Yeah.
Like for me, being invested in this for so long, I have a little bit, I don't want to say common sense, because you don't expect people to just intuitively know about how the body works and everything, but I have enough confidence in myself to put proper context around something if I did it frequently. So if like I weighed myself every day,
right,
and I wasn't going up for a couple days, I understand the context there. So it's
okay,
not going to freak me out.
Flows.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas most people would not. So I think that's dependent on the individual.
Yeah,
because that's one thing that like with my clients all the time is, you know, I want them to weigh themselves. Typically we start off Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but then I will shift that for people.
Yeah.
Some people it's every day. Some people it's once every week. Some people it's once every 2 weeks, depending on, usually, honestly, depending on secondarily the goal, but primarily their psychology.
Yeah.
Like how much can they handle weighing it?
Yeah. And at times in this journey, I have been the psychological screwball that can't weigh myself because I'm terrified to see if the number went the wrong way.
Yeah. And there are people that are also like that who benefit from weighing because they can translate that fear appropriately.
Yeah.
So it doesn't cause anxiety and stress. What it causes is a sense of urgency.
Yeah.
So again, that's all dependent on the person.
Yep.
There's no like right way, wrong way. And I think the biggest thing that I've learned through training is you can only change or alter someone's psychology so much.
Yep.
There's only so much of a degree that you can kind of turn the knob in terms of how they think and how they react to certain things. So what I have to do is try to put together a plan that kind of meets the needs and meets the psychological profile of the individual, which is a lot easier said than done. And of course, takes a lot of trial and error.
Yeah.
So,
and that's the one thing though that's one of the many things that you're very good at, because I know that I'm hard. Like, I'm very hard to work with.
well, you say that, and if you put yourself in proper context and understood the other people that I work with, that would not be the case.
Fair enough.
It's all relative.
Yeah.
But regardless, I do appreciate you recognizing that.
Oh,
That means a lot.
absolutely. I mean, I'm basically to the point now where I kind of design my own diets and do my own thing, and you say, "Yep, that's good," or let's do this.
Yeah.
And I would not be to that point, honestly, in my opinion, as fast as I was without your guidance and teaching me how to do that.
Well, I appreciate it.
So,
All right, man. Time to train.
let's do it.
So with that, we have come to the end of another episode of the Chasing Dreams podcast with Charlie and Justin. This has been episode 122.
Yes.
We appreciate your listenership, and we look forward to hearing back from you guys next week.
Unbreakable, unstoppable, I'm pushed to the edge and take it all. I'm born to be untamable, go right to the edge and never fall. Born of the fire, I'm taking it higher. Unshakable, unstoppable, I'm pushed to the edge and take it all.